is up.
Global controls will have to be imposed, and a world governing body will be created to enforce them.
Welcome to Tinfoil Hat. We go deep, homeboy. Aaron, open your mind. Drink from the fountain of knowledge. There's lizard people everywhere. That's some interdimensional shit. Wake up, Aaron.
This is only the beginning.
Dude, you just blew my mind.
Tinfoil hat, tinfoil hat, tinfoil hat, tinfoil hat.
And welcome to another exciting episode of Tinfoil Hat. We are live, deep in the bunker. You got myself, you got my co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, the most off-the-grid dude you will ever meet in your life with the flowing hair, Ryan Davis. Ryan, how are you?
Hi, I'm ready for this.
This is a good episode. We're super excited. Hopefully Theo will be able to make it. If not, feel free to send him tons of hate mail. Guys, just want to say thank you to all the fans of Tinfoil Hat who came to the St. Louis Funny Bone this weekend. You guys are great. Awesome club. So thankful to be there. I will be at the Funny Stop at the Cuyahoga Falls outside of Cleveland. I think it's called Cuyahoga Falls, Cuyahoga. Just go to samtripoli.com, get those dates, or check out my Twitter. Guys, also check out the new check out the new, our new Twitter, which is the Mad Hatter 39ers. Go check that out. It's the Twitter account is getting bigger and bigger, so we're super excited about it. So what's going on? I found out you just beat a court case. Is that right?
Yeah, this is kind of perfect for this.
Yeah, it is kind of perfect. As you guys know, I'm about 14-3 in traffic court, so I do know the legal system. So I'm very excited about today. As you know, we've had some great guests and some great stuff. If you guys love Tinfoil Hat, please go to our iTunes and leave us some great reviews. Tinfoil, rate, review, hit 5-star, tell your friends. If you want to see the YouTube version of this, please go to youtube.com/Sam Tripoli. We got a very, very exciting show for you. As you know, Netflix has taken over, the world. It's everywhere. Everybody watches it. And one of the biggest shows it's ever had is Making of a Murderer. I know I couldn't stop watching it. Ryan, have you seen it?
No.
But you've done some research on it.
Big time. Once I heard about this subject, I very much got
It
into
is, whether, and I'm going to bring in our guest in a couple seconds, the legal system is so amazing on how it works because ideally you want to believe that right and wrong is what matters the most. And that doesn't always happen. If you ever get a chance to watch the 30 for 30, the Duke lacrosse players, that whole story, what you see is very aggressive prosecution where it's more about being right than doing right. And a lot of people think it's the same situation with Steve Avery and Making a Murderer. So I want to bring our guest real quick and help us go through the whole journey of Making of a Murderer. He's written novels. He's been all over television, has books out there, has a wonderful website called coldcasecameron.com. Please welcome to the show, John A. Cameron. How are you, John?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being on the show. Totally appreciate it. I know you got a lot of stuff going on. We'll get into all of that. And why don't you give our listeners a little background on you, on who you are and why you're so interested in this Making of a Murder to Steve Avery story.
Sure. I was a police officer for 24 years and I retired as a sergeant of detectives in charge of cold cases here in Great Falls, Montana. And after I retired in 2005, I went to work in Deer Lodge Prison, Montana as an analyst for the parole board. So my job was to analyze killers and things in prison make recommendations to the parole board whether or not these people were, safe to get out and become a good member of society. And it was in that position in 2010 that I ended up getting introduced to a serial killer named Edward Wayne Edwards.
Okay, real quick before we get into this guy, your job is to analyze people and basically make a recommendation if you believe that they should be given parole or not. Like, will they be a threat to society?
Exactly. I would review all of their psych records, talk to them, their victims, and make like a one-page recommendation to the parole board.
Now, was there one thing in general that you were looking for that you're like, okay, this dude's going to snap? Or it's like, no, okay, man, obviously it was like that. He's learned his lesson. I recommend that he goes out. Was there anything that really triggered you one way or the other?
You know, there's a lot of people in prison that probably don't belong there, drug cases and small-time offenses, things like that.
Black.
But no, I look for the psychopaths. There were always the telltale signs of the psychopaths, because if you got to read their evaluations all the way to the back when they were teenagers, you knew that they were evil people when they were young. And so you never wanted to release anybody with violence, and especially anybody who was a really smart criminal.
Really?
You know, if you had convictions for things like forgery and fraud and insurance fraud and things like that, and violence, those were two big red flags that you were able to get away with murder.
Really? Holy
Yeah.
shit. Okay, before we get into the serial killer and behind all this thing, joining us in studio, one of my favorite people on the planet, one of the funniest people I know. He has a awesome album out, was #1 for like a couple weeks on iTunes, called 30 Pound Bag of Hamster Bones, and he's got a Netflix special called No Offense, and he has 2 awesome podcasts, allegedly with Matthew Cole Weiss, and this past weekend, my homeboy. I love him to death. Thank you for coming. I know you're super busy.
Thank you.
My
for
good
having me.
friend, Theo Vaughn.
Happy to be here, man. And I'm already super intrigued. Thank you guys for having me so much, Sam. I'm super intrigued by how do you figure out, John, who these guys are, you know? This is fascinating.
He was hired at this, kind of catch you up on what you miss, he's hired at this prison facility.
Mm-hmm.
His job was to make sure that, you know, he was going to look for who he thought might commit crimes again and who he didn't, and it was almost like this weird chess play that went on. To be honest, John, was there anyone that maybe you missed on that got out and kind of made, you know, you thought, hey, dude, this guy's going to be cool, and kind of went out and maybe committed more crimes?
Oh yeah, that happened more than once actually, where you make the mistake of giving a guy a chance, and then he goes out and he whacks somebody 2 years later. Yeah, that does happen, and it did happen when I was in that position twice actually that I can recall. So
really,
and are you
it's a big responsibility, but my job was just to make the recommendation. The parole board could do whatever they wanted to do, so they would let him out maybe against my recommendation, and then they'd go out and kill again.
And is there any liability for these parole boards if that thing sort of happens?
No, not here in Montana. The parole board's actually made up of 5 just individuals that are picked by the governor, and they're just trying to make average people look at the situation and see if they should be released.
Now, is there a recipe for a serial killer? You know, as I was growing up, I would always hear these stories about, like, these serial killers tend to have crazy mothers who, like, dress them up as, like, you know, girls, made them go to school, super religious. You know, there's always this weird kind of...
Killed animals.
Yeah, killed animals.
Yeah.
Is there any, like, recipe for a psychopath, John?
Well, if there is, Ed Edwards was probably the perfect recipe. But usually it's raised by a single parent, abuse at very young age, being smacked in the head up to prior to the age of 5 as punishment. That causes a lot of brain injury.
Oh, really?
Wow, there's going to be a million black serial killers in the future, because every little black kid I see always gets smacked in the head by his mother.
Dude, I just should go to Walmart and be like, serial killer,
Yep.
serial killer, serial killer.
Now, what about also the name Edward Edwards? Is that not a sign for a serial killer, having the same first and last name, or
Yeah.
is that just
Or an
nothing?
assassin.
Well, that in itself, yeah, you know, that's not his real name. His real name was actually Charles Edward Meyer. And at the age of 5, his mother was killed in front of him.
Now,
And-
was she killed, or did she commit suicide? Not that, you know, one is by choice and the other one is a violence commit. Did somebody kill her in front of him, or did she kill herself?
Well, on the death certificate, it was listed as a suicide, that she shot herself in the stomach with a rifle. But what's very strange about the whole thing is that after that happened, he was removed from the home and his name was changed and he was put into an orphanage and he was like removed from any contact with the family. And so there were suspicions that he could have pulled the trigger.
Really?
Wow.
At the age of 5.
Cold-blooded, homeboy. That's early.
Is there a genetic test, do you think, that we'll ever have that we'll be able to tell if people have this in them?
You know, I don't think so, but I think it's pretty easy to find if you have their psych records. Many of these kids are very disturbed when they're young, so they have a lot of psychiatric evaluations. There's a lot of information to be gathered. But, you know, a person like Ed Edwards was a 1 in a million, really.
Really?
I mean, the man was a genius, and he was a killer, and he was a master criminal. So you mix those 3 things together, and his favorite thing was to taunt the police with his intelligence.
Well, now, is there a thing that maybe like just the, you know, nature versus nurture? Like this guy, you say brilliant mind, could like just worked on a higher level. If he had been born in a different environment, could he have gone on to be a CEO, you know, a really successful businessman, and just he got thrown into this world of shit where he just had to like fend for himself, and it kind of like the recipe got mixed up, and then next thing you know, he's a serial killer.
Well, you know, after his mother was killed and then he went to that Catholic orphanage, he was basically raped, beaten, and abused by nuns, priests, and older boys. And so a monster was created that he had no love. That's what he said throughout his life, is he never had a parent to speak of, he never had a mother, and he never had love at the very formative ages.
You are born into a world of shit sometimes. That's why I always, man, when I see somebody, I give them $1. You just don't know where, you know, I mean, like I see some, I try to help people. It's just like, you just don't know what kind of world people were born into. It's fucking rough, dog.
So not every orphanage ends up like Annie, is what you're saying here?
Yeah. So it's not it's like, well, then you got the other opposite. That's Tiffany Haddish, who was born into, you know, an orphanage. Now she's like on all these incredible movies she's doing. It's like, it's just.
But could also still be a serial killer. That's what's amazing about Tiffany.
That's crazy.
She's got a unique, I mean, yeah, she's just has this wild fire in her sometimes. It seems like you can't even get near it. Like, yeah, I can imagine that if somebody has no love at all, that they have no, then of course, why would somebody's life mean anything to them, probably?
Why would anyone's life mean anything?
Yeah.
And it's just like, you got to survive, man. How do you survive? And sometimes it's cold-blooded, dude. So let's get into, before we get into the why you, Edwards, let's get into the making of the murder. Now, Theo, you and I were talking about it all the time as it came out. It really caught your eye. Why'd you love it so? Why'd you love that whole series?
Well, I mean, I literally can't sleep at night unless I know there's a new murder that I don't know about. So
Yeah, isn't
that's
it
where I'm
weird?
at with murder.
Yeah.
Like, I watched a murder this morning. I watched an episode of Disappeared I hadn't seen on the way here.
Do you ever feel bad, like you're like, oh, a new season of First 48 comes out, and you're like, well, that means 24 people had to die for me to be entertained. Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, I feel a little bit bad about it, but I also feel grateful to those people.
Okay, I respect that.
You know, I
respect that.
I'll usually pray a little bit before I'll watch an episode.
John, would you let Theo out of prison if he told you that at your little meeting before he goes in front of the parole board?
Well, I think he'd have to wear an ankle bracelet.
Okay, I respect that.
But it's just fascinating, man. It's amazing how we're so into this. But I will start emailing people that are in the shows and saying, like even if it's an old case or something. If
You
somebody...
email these killers?
Oh, yeah. I'll email the people that are accused of it. And
Really?
I'll hit them up on Facebook if I can find them. Yeah, I get angry about it.
Don't you wish Twitter had don't you wish First 48 had Twitter handles on there?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like Pooh Bear. You know, you can find out what happened to Pooh Bear.
Yeah.
I always
It would be
wondered that.
great. But yeah, making a murder out of the gate, I mean, obviously, just the guy's life was fascinating. The fact that he got accused of a murder and then was not guilty of that.
Well, first of all,
Got a
he gets
huge settlement.
accused of a rape. Now, did you study the making of a murder story, John, before you got into this Edwards connection, or what's your thoughts on that whole case?
No, I spent 6 years investigating Ed Edwards, following his life and interviewing all of his families and some of his victims, and just followed his life, published a book. And he liked to frame people his whole life. I'd never even heard of Making of a Murderer. And Somebody
It's
called me after
crazy,
they read
huh?
my book and said, you need to watch this show because what you wrote about in your book is exactly what's taking place on Netflix right now.
Holy shit.
And within the first 3 episodes, it was clear that could have been an Ed Edwards murder. And he was definitely around at the time to do it.
Okay, so let's get in real quick in case people lived under a rock and hadn't seen that show. Let me just give some quick little breakdowns, and if anybody wants to chime in with thoughts on that, we'll do that, and we'll just get the information going. Ryan, do you want to tell us real quick all the info you got? So the making of the murder is basically about this woman, Penny Bernstein, Beerntsen. She was a victim of sexual assault and attempted murder. Right before that happens, Stephen Avery has a fight with one of his female cousins. Like, she got him in trouble, and he saw her driving down the street, so he pulled her over, got out a gun. Like, she says he whipped his pants down and started jerking off, which he says he never did. He just wanted to have a talk with her about backing the fuck off.
Sometimes you got to talk with your dick,
Sometimes you got to talk with your dick.
A dick and a gun at the same time?
Yeah, dick and that's 2 guns. That's 2 guns. Has to talk with. Now, here's the thing: his female cousin is married to law enforcement, some police officers. And, as much as I love cops, my grandfather was a cop. Sometimes there's a fine line between cop and criminal. And it's like, which side do you fall on? I've talked about this before. When my grandfather passed away, half his funeral was, one side was Niagara Falls law enforcement, the other side was the Niagara Falls Mafia. That's how my grandpa was. That's how he rolled. Not saying every cop. I think there's great cops out there. It's not anti-cop rant. I'm totally pro-cops. If you don't, it's like, without cops, there'd be chaos. But they're also human beings. And they also have this egos, and they have personalities, they have insecurities. Like everybody else, there's good and bad, and there's, good and bad apples. They have a problem with Stephen Avery. Suddenly, this woman says she's running on the beach, and she gets grabbed, sexually assaulted, almost murdered. She gives a description of the assailant. It literally looks nothing like Stephen Avery. Nothing like him. He gets thrown in jail. He does 18 years, takes 18 years for DNA to exonerate him. Yeah, 18 years in prison. That's crazy. How often did you, John, find people that you go, this guy didn't? Did you ever have that where you're like, this guy did not do this crime and he is in jail for this?
Yes, actually, 3 times when I was the parole board analyst, that it was clear to me anyway on these cases that they were in prison on murders they didn't do. And that's something Edwards played on, was the police ability to kind of have tunnel vision on a murder case, especially a horrific murder case, and want to close it out and not look at the bigger picture.
And there's probably a lot of, not only ego, but there's probably a lot of pressure on them when the media gets involved. Like we saw with the Casey Anthony thing, and Nancy Grace completely pushed that whole case way quicker than it was ready to go. And she forced the local authorities to arrest Casey Anthony and bring her to trial, maybe before they were ready to bring her to trial. And I'm sure this happens with guilty. I mean, like, I'm going to be honest with you. The black community gets thrown under the bus constantly in this thing. That's why, in an idealistic world, I am pro death penalty, but we don't live in that world.
Yeah.
I'd rather see 1 million guys walk free than one guilty guy go to jail, because I'm always like, what if that's me one day?
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the right representation, you got the wrong guy, and we'll see that with Brendan, that he gets the wrong lawyer and he gets thrown under the bus. It's fucking rough, dude.
Yeah.
So he goes 18 years, he goes to jail, he gets out, he gets exonerated. He's going to sue the police. He's going to sue them for what? $48 million, I believe that was the number?
Not enough.
Not enough.
How much is it going to cost you 18 years of your life?
You'll never get that back.
You should be able to take a life after that point.
That's why they fine you in time, not in money.
Yeah.
They fine you in time. And it's like, you're going to do this amount of time. We're going to take this finite number of years you are alive. We're going to take this away from you.
Yeah.
And you only have this left. And that's what they did. It took 18 years. Now, I think Steve Avery gets in trouble when the insurance company that covers the police in lawsuits tells them, we're not covering you if you lose this case. And the $48 million is coming out of these dudes' pockets. And that's where he gets fucked. So this girl, Teresa Hallenbach, is that her name? Is that how you say it? Halbach gets sued. I mean, supposed to go to Stephen Avery's and try to sell this car on, I believe, Craigslist or Auto Finder or something like that. That's the last known picture of her alive. She takes a picture in front of it. She disappears. They don't even look at anybody else. They zero in on Stephen Avery because now they have to, they got $48 million. Hanging over their head. They shut down his property for a week. No one's allowed on the property for a week. A week, man. They're scouting the houses back and forth, back and forth. Nobody found nothing. What's the name of the county?
Manitowoc.
Manitowoc authorities are not allowed on the case because there's a conflict of interest. They still get on the property. Suddenly find him. Boom. They suddenly, after a week of searching this house, find a key there.
Yeah.
Suddenly they found open, clean, found. Now here we are. We're at the murders. They get convicted on this whole false confession. No real evidence puts them right there. Here's where, John, you come in. Why do you believe that Edwards committed this crime?
Well, you got to look at Ed himself, first of all. He's a highly brilliant man who wrote a book when he was 39 years old. And in that book, he claimed that he was basically a reformed criminal. He was married for 43 years. He had 5 kids. He had 11 grandchildren. And he was allowed to travel the country from the 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way up till his death in 2010, claiming that he was a reformed criminal when, in fact, what he was doing, and was proven by his guilty pleas, was killing.
Jesus Christ. How many murders do you think he committed?
He was killing every year that he was out. And he was available. He was out 66 years. He started at age 12, and he went until 77, killing, traveling every part of the country, and portraying himself as a police officer, a civil servant, a psychiatrist, and a preacher. So he was able to gain access, and the Stephen Avery was just a beautiful setup for him. It was 2003 when he was released from prison. He was all over the press.
Okay.
In 2003, as a wrongfully convicted man.
Portraying himself as all the characters he'd probably seen do wrong to him or had some anger against.
Now framing people. Well, you have a couple murders that he's known for, like 5 big murders, right, Ryan?
Yeah, John, he confessed to 5 total, correct?
Yeah, 4 of them were couples parked on lovers' lanes, and then the 5th one was a man that he actually adopted, changed his name to Danny Boy Edwards.
Yep.
Killed him and collected $250,000 of insurance. So that kind of showed you his criminal side.
Let's get into these murders real quick. Can you tell us what you know about them real quick, Ryan?
Let's break it down. So the first one, 1977, was Billy Lavaco and Judy Straub. It was in Ohio, and he shot the young couple parked on Lover's Lane, right? If you can go ahead and just give us more information you know about that one.
Do you know any thoughts on those murders?
Yeah, sure, because I had the same type of murder here in Montana in 1956, where Edwards was here, approached a couple, shot them in a car, kidnapped the girl, put her on her knees, and shot her in the head twice. And so that was the whole reason I got involved with Ed Edwards, is I wanted him to confess to the murder that was just like the one he was confessing to in Ohio. And, he's the Zodiac killer. He liked to sneak up on couples in their cars who were having sex out of wedlock or cheating on their husbands or their wives, and seek revenge on them because he was born an illegitimate child, just like, these people are out creating. So that was his obsession.
Now, do you think he was the Zodiac killer, or do you think he was like the Zodiac killer?
No, he was the Zodiac killer.
You believe that Edward Wayne's Edwards was the Zodiac killer?
Yeah, he definitely was. And that's what got me obsessed with the whole thing, is I confronted him about that. Because I was able to show him killing couples in cars from 56 all the way up until his capture in 2010.
Now the weirdest thing about Wayne Edwards is he goes to jail, right? He goes to jail. You know, as a kid, he's in the system.
1955.
Now he's getting assaulted. He escapes from jail. Do you know how he escapes from jail? He pushes the guard and runs off.
No.
Into a field.
Like
you could do in the 50s.
That's how you did it back in the 50s.
Wow.
You just pushed the guard and ran off.
And they never caught him again.
And
That's when he ended up in my home state, Montana. After he did that, he ended up in my state killing that couple on a lover's lane and got away with it.
By pushing a guy.
And when the first time that you met him, John, right, and spent time with him?
I spoke to him on the phone and exchanged letters with him for 11 months.
And whenever you spoke to him on the phone, do you get any semblance that, like, do you just worry that he's playing you the whole time, or do you feel like you're in control, or do you feel like he's in control?
Yeah, some some Silence of the Lambs stuff.
Yeah, because I could.
He's in control.
He's in control.
He was in total control. He was going to give me what he wanted me to get, and the reason is, you know, I figured out early on and confronted him as being the Zodiac killer, but what he kept telling me and my friend is, it's so much worse, and that we didn't understand that he framed people. And that really was what he was trying to get me to realize, that he's dead and he's got people framed on death row and he's killing in his afterlife, just like the Zodiac said he would do.
Hey, can we play a little bit of his confession real quick? It was on your website. Can we play a little bit of
do you
his...
have it up? Can you do it?
Yeah, we'll play it real quick.
Danny Boy Edwards.
So anyways, let's set this murder up. Another murder they did, and John, can you kind of set up the Danny Boy? You kind of got into it. I just didn't want to jump it too much, but can you explain to our listeners and Theo what he did for what this murder involved?
Well, in regards to Danny Boy, or do you want it? The most important one on the Avery case is the fact that he killed in Wisconsin, not too far from where Avery and Halbach incident happened, and he confessed to that Lover's Lane killing. And that was another couple, but in that case, he strangled them and stabbed them. So basically, he kills by rope, by knife, by gun, and by fire, and that's what the Zodiac killer did. And with Danny Boy Edwards, he just picked a very low IQ individual, convinced him to go in the Army, convinced him to change his name to D.B. Edwards, and then convinced him to put $250,000 worth of life insurance on himself. And he did all of this, and it took 2 years to set it up. And then he lured him to his house, killed him, hid his body for a year, had them find the body in a cemetery, and then collected $250,000 and got away with it in 1996.
Here's him confessing to the whole thing real quick.
A fellow in Youngstown that was going to come by, pick him up, and hide him out for a couple of months, and then he would be clear. He wouldn't have to worry about anything. He believed all this, and it was up there where he died, and I had the body partially covered and kept it that way. I went back up there about every 3 or 4 months to check, because I wanted the body found, but not immediately, but I didn't want to bury it either. So I left it partially covered. And the one time, it was about a year later, when I went up to check on it, the head had been separated from the body due to the animals and everything. And I took it with me.
Animals.
And took it across the street and threw it up into the field. And the police and everything, they've been looking for it, but they can't find it. It was nothing but the skull. They've been unable to find it. But there was 100 that found Danny, and the rest of the story, everybody knows it, where he was found and why, but that was set up. And after he was found, it was, I'm not sure, maybe a year later, maybe not as much as a year, that I collected $250,000 from the investigation. But
makes me want to kill my buddy, dude. Honestly, one of my low life friends.
Set it up. Oh my God, dude.
Do you think, and John, so I have this question is, if he can't feel any love, why does it manifest itself as murdering people? Like, why do these people end up being murderers?
Well, he looked at it as he's doing the world a favor by not creating more of him. And that's why he killed couples in cars having sex out of wedlock and creating, having babies that didn't have loving parents or fathers or whatever it might be. That was one reason why he would kill, because he would kill cheaters too, and sinners, and people that were screwing around their husbands and their wives, and it was all based kind of on the Catholic religion of the 7 deadly sins. If you were a sinner, he felt justified to kill you.
And then why did he kill Teresa Halbeck then? If you
Okay, so let's get into that real quick. So your theory is, and the theory that is out there is that he was somewhat jealous of Stephen Avery or saw an opportunity to set this thing up. Now, do you know of any cases besides the Stephen Avery one where you believe he set somebody up and went and watched their trial? Do you know of any, John, offhand?
Yeah, he attended trials in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s. He testified in the late 80s at a guy's trial that he had framed.
Do you have any more details on any of those cases that, like, where he kind of set up and the guy actually went to jail?
Yeah, in fact, in 1955, before he came to my hometown, he framed a man named Burton Abbott down in California. And while Edwards was here in Montana in Deer Lodge Prison, they executed Burton Abbott for his murder.
Oh,
and
my God.
They got away with it. So that's why the Zodiac was the executioner, is that he could frame people and be the judge, jury, and executioner. And that's why he wore that executioner's hood in September of 1969 when he killed a couple on a beach in California. And he actually told them, the Zodiac Killer said to that couple in 1969 that he had been in Deer Lodge Prison, that he had killed a guard, that he had stolen a car, and he was headed to Mexico. And Edwards had done all of that here in Montana, but he had done it 13 years earlier, 1956 to 59, when he was in Deer Lodge Prison where I worked. And basically there was a riot where 2 guards were killed, and Edwards was part of the riot. And it was always a game with Edwards. He would always give clues to his victims. And in regards to the Avery case, Paul Avery was a reporter for the San Francisco Examiner and Chronicle during the Zodiac case. And the Zodiac sent Paul Avery letters in 1973 over and over again, taking responsibility for other murders and teasing Paul Avery, that he was framing.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who is Paul Avery again?
He's a reporter that, he was in the movie Zodiac, actually.
Okay.
He's the reporter from San Francisco that chased the Zodiac and kind of, went downhill after it.
Did he ever link him to Edwards? Did he ever link Edwards and Zodiac?
Yes, yeah. In fact, the Zodiac puzzles that were sent in 1969 and 70 that said if you solved them, you would have my name. We solved them in 2010, confronted Edwards, and the puzzle said, my name is Edward Edwards.
What?
He had taken his name and made hieroglyphics out of the letters in his name, and nobody could understand what those hieroglyphics meant, but they were basically just the letters to his name in mirror image, and he was teasing everybody with his intelligence. And when we cracked it, the 13 characters were to the cipher, 13 characters to the name Edward Edwards, and he had used the letters in his name. And once you had his name, it was solvable, and that's when we confronted him. He confirmed we were right, but that we didn't quite understand how bad it was. We thought, well, you're the Zodiac. Holy shit, this is fucking cool.
That's gotta be crazy, right?
But it's so much worse than that because he framed people.
Right.
And he always tied his killings back to names of previous murders, like an Avery. Nobody knows that another Stephen Avery was murdered in 1973 near Leavenworth Prison. And Edwards did it, and Edwards was in Leavenworth Prison. A guy named Stephen Avery, his mother Hazel Avery, and a guy named Gary Longfellow were all executed in a car with 2 shots to the head like Teresa Halbeck was. And that happened in 73. Stephen Avery gets out in 2003, and Ed can't resist setting up a guy who just did 18 years, but not only setting up Stephen Avery, but setting up the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office to look stupid and look like they were the ones planting the evidence. Those cops wouldn't have done all that. It was too obvious. It led right back to them. I mean, they're not that stupid. But the killer was always inside the cops, and that's the way Edwards was in all his murders. He was inside under assumed identities, leading the direction to anybody but him.
Oh my God!
And those photos where you see him, John, where you see him in the background of some of these court appearances and stuff, is that definitely him?
In the Avery case, I don't know for sure. We never did identify who that man is in the courtroom in that case. But there's 2 other cases back in '56 here in Montana and in Chicago that it's definitely him in the background at the funerals of the victims. And he was always in front.
That could be any dude in the Midwest.
Yeah,
also.
that
That's
could be any dude in the Midwest. That could.
Looks like both of my grandfathers.
Yeah.
Just going to pay a parking ticket.
Yeah, but that looks a lot like him, though. That looks a lot like him.
But but no matter what, whether that's him in this photo or not, you believe that he did this, though, John.
Yeah, he had killed in Wisconsin. Obviously, he confessed to the 1980 double murder, but he had killed in Wisconsin in the 50s and 60s too, and he hated Wisconsin for the very fact that the warden in Deer Lodge Prison, where I worked, came from Wisconsin and really threw the prison for a loop, and that's when the riot happened, and Edwards got involved in the riot, and so he would return to states that he named in his book and kill and frame somebody. He did it here in Montana, he did it in Wisconsin, Ohio, Florida, Texas, California, Arizona.
So let's do this. You have it. You believe he did it. Can you take us through it, how you see it plays out, and how Edwards set this up and put the whole thing in motion?
Yeah, as soon as Stephen Avery was released in 9/11 of 2003 is when Edwards would have saw that. He would have seen that he did 18 years wrongfully convicted. He had the right name to connect it to his puzzle with the Zodiac with the name Avery, and he lived in the right state, Wisconsin, a state that Edwards hated and had killed him. And so what Ed would have done is try to figure out, how can he set him up? Well, Teresa Halbach was the female that regularly went to the Avery salvage yard to photograph the cars they were selling. And so that was a perfect opportunity. You know, here you got Teresa working for a magazine, editor of a magazine, photographer for a magazine. That's exactly who the Zodiac taunted his whole life, were editors and magazines and newspapers. And he would just have to figure out how to get her to go to Avery Salvage at the last place known that she was, and then kill her, and then slowly plant the evidence to imply that it was Stephen and the cops did the planting. Well, the way to do that is to get into the cops. He had to have known somebody in the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office, and they wouldn't have known him as Edward Edwards. He would have had credentials. He had a machine to make them that would have showed that he was a retired Marine, that he was a
Did
civil
he have
expert.
that? Was that something he was known for, as having like a laminate maker and some kind of official identification? Is that something he did?
They seized it actually in 2009, and he was making not only identifications as police officers, but also as a doctor of psychiatry with all of the diplomas and setting up offices and luring his victims into his office.
Wow.
And preacher. And so it was easy to whip out the credentials, and he knew civil engineering. He went to the Marines when he was 17. He did basic training in the Marines in 1950, and then they found out that he lied about his name and everything, and they threw him out, and he started killing.
Now, John, what's the evidence that he's planted that you're referring to?
Yeah, so he kidnaps, kills her. How does he plant the evidence? Now, this is a weird moment because you're saying there's some kind of collusion going on between him and the cops. Cops might not know he's a serial killer, but all of a sudden bones show up, which is a big thing that people talked about on the show, that these bones suddenly get there. There's no sign of any kind of blood or anything in the house where the murder supposedly happens. This idiot redneck guy suddenly becomes Dexter, fucking puts up all this plastic in this place, kills everybody. No DNA is found anywhere of her in the house, but suddenly there's bone fragments in the pit. How does he get her in your head, as you know, Edwards? How does he get the body to the pit?
And the car back to the property, right?
Yes. How's that all happen?
Right, and we know the car wasn't there after she disappeared. They flew over when she was reported missing. That car was not in that lot. It was brought there that next Friday night, a few days later, and it was seen driving in there and being planted in there. So that's the first thing they find is the car. Then 2 days later, they start finding bones in the burn pit. And then the next day, they find a key planted inside the bedroom. And he would have been part of that, you know, the 40 to 60 people that all got together the day they were going to go look for the car. And Hilligus, the boyfriend, led that charge. He led the search team. And that's who, you know, Kathleen Zellner is naming right now as the suspect in the case. That's who Edwards would have gotten into, was Hilligus and Teresa Halbach. But Teresa's dead, but he would have gotten anything he needed as just the nice helper guy who attended the meetings and claimed to have expertise in searches. And he did. He attended many of his searches throughout his life. He would have been inside the church that Teresa Halbach went to. He would have attended it, so he would have looked comfortable. That's the way he was. He could groom his way into anybody, and they would come to him.
And is there any extra proof of that? Like, have you been able to speak with the boyfriend?
You know, since Kathleen Zellner took over the case, I went out and visited with the Averys just after Netflix released that show because I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Wow.
And I questioned them, and I gave them a copy of my book, and I showed them pictures of Edwards, and basically Edwards was the same age as Steve's mom and dad. And it was as simple as getting into the salvage yard, getting his DNA off any of the old T-shirts, underwear, whatever. And that's how easy it would have been because Steve cut his finger. There would have been blood in the garbage cans. There clearly was blood.
But I mean, and now getting onto those properties, because, like, you know, I grew up in a ratty white environment, and the last thing you want to go do is milling around on some poor white people's land. Like, I would way rather jump onto the White House lawn than I would jump onto the white trash house lawn, you know? So what makes you think that an old guy like that can get on there?
Well, yeah, I was out at the car lot. I mean, basically, you just pull in there and you say, I'm looking for a part for this car. You mind if I go look in your lot? The lot was massive. It was 44 acres. Anybody is allowed to go out there. And in fact, when they found the car, and this is in the record from the phone call that Pam Stern made, there was a man standing back on the hill that made her frightened and scared her. And I believe at that time that would have been Ed Edwards. He had planted the car. He was part of the search team. And he just led police down this path to make it look like Avery did it. So Avery either had to be the stupidest, smartest criminal or someone was planting the evidence. And they're claiming it's Ryan Hilligus. But he's a nurse. He's not a psychopath.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we do see in all the, you know, it's a classic Law and Order plot. They, you know, when a murder or a crime happens, they always take pictures of everybody watching, and then happens again, they take a picture again, and they look for the same guy who's there all the time. And at the end of the day, how many murders do you think that Edwards had committed? If you had to ballpark it, and you're like, you don't have the exact number, but what would you say it would be?
On the average, 5 to 10 a year when he was out and able to do it. So 66 years he was killing, and out of those 66, 14 he was in prison. So basically to have like 48 years, right around there, to kill 5 to 10 a year every year. And that really, you have to read what the Zodiac said in his letters. He got his rocks off by killing and framing people. And so that was his addiction. There's no serial killer that's ever been profiled like Ed Edwards. You know, he was married with a family who, you know, he stabbed his wife once and refused to let her go to the hospital because he could fix her. He portrayed himself as a doctor. He had all the techniques to do it.
Now, how long was he married this whole time?
Yes, he was married to the same wife for the past 43 years.
After he stabbed her?
Yeah, yes. She stayed with him, and she would never cross him. And her kids would never cross him either. He just was, you know, he would travel from one end of the country to the other. They'd be under assumed names. They'd be living in campgrounds or rented houses, attend school a year here, go to another place, attend school a year here. And the whole time, Dad's killing.
Do they
But
know?
they don't know it. They just know that something's not right.
They know nothing. You think there's any way, like, he left clues, or because I can't imagine that if I'm that sadistic and I'm around my family, that I wouldn't like drop little, little hints in here and there, like whether I'm writing it on the bottom of their Christmas presents or something just devilish and bizarre,
Yeah.
Do you
He
think?
openly did that with his children. He talked about the Zodiac killer case his whole life with
Really?
his children. He made them watch the movies. He made them watch The Exorcist. He made them almost partake in a way and not know it.
Now, did you talk to any of them? Any of his kids, his family?
He had 5 kids. I've talked to 4 of them.
Oh, really?
I've talked to the wife. He had 3 wives, actually, and I've talked to 2 of them. And he killed when he was with them. Him and his wife would traipse around as a doctor of psychiatry. He would get the information needed to frame somebody and kill somebody, usually cheating husband or cheating wife or somebody sinning in a bad way, stealing money, and then frame someone close to him and walk away as the nicest guy in the world. Nobody suspected.
And no children. It doesn't sound like he did this with children, huh?
Oh, no, he killed many, many, many children. He killed kids from babies. He killed up to old people, black people, white people, native people. He tried to create hatred in all of his killings. Like going into Atlanta in 1979-81 and killing 24 little black kids in the Atlanta child killings and framing Wayne Williams. He was the police officer.
Hold on. Damn. Are you trying to tell me that you're saying that Edward Wayne Edwards
is the original ISIS?
Human cancer?
You're saying that he did all those killings to the... You're telling me that Edwards killed all those kids in Atlanta? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, he was actually arrested there in 1982, right after the trial of Wayne Williams.
What?
And he had been living with a Marietta, Georgia police officer, which was a relative of his, and he was part of the task force. He had a uniform, a Marietta, Georgia uniform. And I got a picture of him with his arm around the captain of the Atlanta Police Department.
Are you fucking serious?
He was inside, and he was trying to create hatred, and all those kids were spread out in church parking lots, police parking lots, very public displays of a ritual killer, and the killer was a cop. It was a white cop.
And what happened with Williams? He went to jail for it.
Still in 34 years. Yeah, he's still in. I talked to him. I sent him a copy of Ed's book because Ed wrote a book, and in that book was the answers to all his murders, actually. What? He named every city and state that he killed in his whole life in that book.
Where can you get that book? Can you get that book?
Yeah, it's called Metamorphosis of a Criminal, and it's $2,000 to $3,000 actually. Some of those books. It was a 430-page puzzle written by the Zodiac in 1972.
Are
Basically,
you serious?
It was his whole life. He mentioned my hometown 30 times in it, and it turns out he was here when we had a horrible Zodiac killing in 1956.
In Deer Lodge, you mean?
That book ended up being the answer to all his murders.
And I'll tell you this as a side note. I did a show in Deer Lodge one time. Beautiful small town.
Really?
Yep.
Really?
I did a show there about 2 years ago.
Yeah, he hated Deer Lodge Prison. At the time he was here in 56 to 59, it had no electricity, it had no running water. He hated it, and so he sought revenge on Montana and killed here throughout his life.
So if he's so prolific and doing all this, how can no one catch him? How is he free for so long?
He was caught all the time for burglaries, robberies, arson, insurance fraud, and he would immediately rat. He was an informant.
Oh,
and he was
my
a paid
God.
informant. But what they didn't know is he would be, in on a robbery, and he'd say, "Hey, man, I'll tell you about a murder, and I know who did it." And then he'd give them the information that would match who he framed, and they'd follow it, and they'd arrest him, and he'd be executed. So there's people on death row right now. There's at least 12 people sitting on death row serving life sentences that he framed that are still in.
This is
this
insane.
Is this just your belief, do you think? And I'm just playing a little bit of devil's advocate.
That's what this is about.
Or is this widely held by more people than just you?
Well, if people want to follow Ed Edwards' life, they can do the work themselves. I put my book out, which was which just listed out the evidence of who he was.
Mm-hmm.
But he published his own books and his own albums and his own movies and his own websites and all of this stuff that was puzzles. So if you want to follow it, anybody can do it, but officials do not want to follow it because the liability that this man created is beyond anything that can be imagined. And we're having innocent people being executed that he framed, and they'd never want to admit it. And, you know, like in the Avery case, who's going to be sued is the cops. They're the ones with the deep pockets.
Right.
They're the ones that are going to have the money. You can't get money out of an old dead serial killer.
What final thoughts here real quick? What was the final crime that what did he get convicted of? Was he put on death row, and how did he finally die?
Yeah, he pled guilty to double murder in Wisconsin from 1980, found out he couldn't get the death penalty, so he told them about a double murder in 1977 in Ohio, found out he couldn't get the death penalty, then turned around and admitted the killing of Danny Boy Edwards in 1996. That's a 20-year span of killing. He got his death penalty, going to be executed August 31st, 2011, and he died April 7th, 2011 of natural causes.
My God.
Do you think he killed himself at the end?
Yeah, and I think I might have assisted him. He was a diabetic, and all he wanted from me was a big case of candy. And so I sent him it, the kind that you can send into the prison, a big case of bit of honey. And I have all these letters where he's just thanking me for that candy. And yeah, I really believe that he assisted in his own death because what he wanted was to be uncovered, know that the puzzle was up, and then die.
So in the end, he almost framed you a little bit.
Crazy.
Oh, that guy was messing with me and my friend.
Wow.
But it was scary. It was very scary for a time there.
Well, you know what, man? I can't thank you enough. This was an amazing episode. Are you working on anything else right now that we should be looking for?
Yeah, there'll be a documentary coming out in 6 months.
Wow.
Spike TV. It's going to be called "It Was Him: The Many Murders of Ed Edwards."
Oh my
and,
God!
Been working on that for about a year. And
Any
3
other
months
cases? Any other not Edwards, Wayne Edwards, but other killers? Anything else you working on?
I never want to meet another killer again.
I
This guy
respect
was
that,
the
dude.
worst. He was the worst mother ever, and it's just like I just want to enjoy the mountains now.
Well,
I have one last question.
Go,
Is it
go,
okay,
go.
Sam?
Yeah.
What would you say to like amateur sleuths who because people are fascinated right now by murder and crime. I feel like it's at an all-time high.
Some people are actually emailing these people. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, and that's me.
Yeah.
The boyfriend, I definitely messaged that guy on Facebook.
Really?
Yeah. Undeniable. I just remembered. I forgot about it. That's where my psyche
And
goes
did he ever
when I'm
hit you
watching
back?
these shows. No, he didn't hit me back. But what would you say to just a couple of sleuths that want to get out there and investigate some of these cases? You see a lot with these new podcasts and stuff that are happening. Do you recommend that? Can that kind of stuff, like they had that Tara Grinstead murder that the guy was just, they have a series called Up and Vanished, and he'd gone through the entire case, and then it just spurned some interest in the community, and somebody else came forward and admitted to the killing. What do you say to like young sleuths who want to get out there and kind of take things in their own hands?
Do it, but be very careful. And like in the case of Ed Edwards, the evidence was always false, steered to somebody else. And if you look at it in that light, then the evidence actually falls in place to you because Edwards always made sure it was out there. So if you want to be a sleuth, you can destroy a lot of innocent lives if you're not careful.
Wow. Well, John, thank you so much. Again, you can go to his website, coldcasecameron.com. Always see all the stuff he's got going on.
Wow.
John, thank you so much for coming on the show. And, we really appreciate your time. And good luck with the doc on Spike TV. And hopefully we'll be able to have you back on soon to talk about the movie coming out.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Take care, my friend.
Wow.
Crazy, huh?
Fascinating.
Fucked up.
Aren't you glad you came?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's fascinating, man.
Dude, I gotta be honest with you. I did not know you did all that crazy stuff. So do you think? Let's be honest. Do you believe And Aaron, this is where with our guy who refuses to drink from the fountain of knowledge. Do you think he put too much into Wayne Edwards? Like a Zodiac killer, also that famous cases in Atlanta. Thoughts, guys?
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
I mean, shit.
Yeah, I mean, the guy looks kind of lazy. He's not in shape. Like, how much?
Well, when can you work? I mean, dude, you're a comic. You're a fucking hustler.
Yeah.
Like the guy's his comedy is killing. When does he have time to go work out?
That's true.
Hey, dude, I gotta kill these kids at 5. I gotta set up this guy at 9. I ain't got time to hit Pilates, dog.
I mean, he's definitely going. I gotta kill at 8.
Yeah.
Gotta hit the drive-through on the way to the next killing.
Yeah.
Like he's not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of killing, a lot of setting
He's making
up.
time for food.
Yeah.
He's not making time to work.
Probably guy is hitting the drive-through all the time. Gotta eat another Big Mac because I gotta be over here to fucking kill this kid. I don't got time for fucking home-cooked meals.
I mean, he put a lot on this guy, and I mean, I was as fascinated to talk to him just because of the amount of research and the breadth of knowledge that he has.
Talk to me about your emailing of these people. I never knew that about you.
Yeah, well, I get on some of these things where it just seems obvious to me. And, of course, I'm a victim of the information. Sometimes it's out there. I mean, these things are presented in a way where you just get keyed up, you know. And I mean, this is bizarre. I just kind of remember this. I used to collect, they had all those remember those missing person cards that would come in the mail when you were young, like the blue and white ones or the black and white ones? And it would just say 1-800-missing, I think.
Yeah.
And then they had 2 little pictures of somebody who was missing. I collected all those, I remember growing up. So I had to say, like, every week they would come and I would just stack them. You know, I just had all these missing kids. And I would look at them and try and, just because I thought maybe I'll see one of these kids, you know.
So you've always been interested in solving crimes and doing sleuth stuff like that.
Yeah, I found a couple. I was just talking about this on my podcast this morning. I found a peace sign in the woods sometimes. Part of somebody's hand had been cut off when I was young, and I found a peace sign.
Like that?
Fingers 2 and 3. 2 and 3.
Did you call the cops?
We told some man that ran this kind of sugar shack or kind of a lemonade cracker outlet, and he
That's a why. Was it a lemonade stand or a crack house?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of everything.
I could get that.
And he called the police, and they came and got it and took it. We never heard anything else about it. But I remember always thinking, like, I got to find a man who only has
2 fingers.
Only has 2 fingers or 3 fingers.
Yeah.
And my father was missing a finger. And then my mother used to watch. All we would watch together was Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted.
Yeah, I watch that all the time. I am consumed with. I mean, like, you got this new show on Netflix called The Keepers.
Yeah,
you guys
saw it.
watch that?
Yeah.
I mean, like, do you watch that, Aaron? It's crazy. It's crazy, dude. What people will do to other people.
How do you guys sleep? Because I hear that theme song from Unsolved Mysteries, and I just like, nope, I'm changing the channel.
Oh, wow.
I don't think I've watched a full one. His voice.
I feel bad for.
Maybe
well,
you
know
can
what I
help
do,
solve
dude?
a mystery.
Is one thing I'll tell you
Robert
for sure.
Stack. Yeah.
Is that I keep my eye on everybody around me.
Yeah.
Because you're 999,000 times more likely to get killed by somebody you know than somebody you don't know.
So what questions would you have for people that you know to try and, get an inkling?
I think people kill for passion, you know?
Yeah.
Don't fuck people over. Don't fuck over people's men, women, their significant others. Don't steal from them. That seems to be what it is. I mean, even on a global scale, you know, it's like people think that because Washington, D.C., everybody's got suits on, that they're noble human beings.
I don't.
Compared to crackheads or people on the end when you watch like the first 48 and it's like, man, he owed me $5, so I killed him. And you're like, $5? Well, these guys are killing for trillions of dollars. It's all about fucking owning the corner, dude.
Yeah. Some people's power is some people's crack, you know.
I just don't put myself in bad situations.
Yeah.
I don't trust anybody I don't know, and it doesn't mean I'm a bad person, but I keep my eye on motherfuckers. Yeah. And, dude, every time you see somebody on TV, they're like, oh, this guy was arrested for killing children. And the next door neighbors were always like, he was a nice guy. Nah, dude, look at him. That guy's shady as fuck.
Yeah.
He looks like if you look like a combination of meth and lots of cats, I know you're up to something.
Yeah.
White. white. That's all I say.
No, but dude,
There's no Mexican
more and
serial
more black
killers.
guys are coming out.
They caught
More
one
and more
black guy in Baton
guys.
Rouge a while back. When I was in college, they had I just remembered this. When I was in college, they had this No, it wasn't the BTK guy. It was this other guy. He was killing women, and he killed like 3 or 4 women in Baton Rouge over about a year, and then they finally caught him.
But they're usually prostitutes. So, I mean, keep that snatch. right
Leave
where it
the
needs to be.
ladies alone.
true.
They just want to make you feel better.
We had a black serial killer in L.A.
Yeah, I
The
think
Grim
we had
Sleeper.
2.
Yeah.
I think we had 2.
But it's rare, I think. I mean, it's more. It's definitely
I-
been a white man's game over the years.
Yeah.
I do think it was a white man's game. It just seems like there's also a lot of Mexican serial killers.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, just there's people just go on rampages, man.
Do you think there's serial killers out there right now?
Fuck yeah.
Fuck.
There's like, what they say at any time, there's like 50 serial killers in the United States.
What the
There's
fuck,
people
dude?
they don't even know about.
Oh my god.
I used to be a cable guy, and I remember one time I was doing a cable installation, and this
Yeah.
guy was laying plastic down at the end of the hallway, and he had a hammer visible. And I just walked out of the cable installation. I was like, "Oh hell no! I know what's about to happen."
Dude, creeper's gonna creep, bro. I don't put myself in those
keep
situations.
your head on a swivel.
Have you ever thought that you could, even just for a moment in your life, thought that you could be a murderer or felt like,
Dude, I'm honest, man. I can't hurt anything.
yeah.
Now, Sam,
I'm someone who's like, I can't take somebody's life. It's just not.
Yeah,
who
I
am I?
couldn't.
I can't even do it. I had a spider living near me
Mm-hmm.
for like a week. Its web was all there, and I'm like, hey, dude, you just keep those moths away. We're cool, dog.
yeah, Sam had to talk me out of even talking about killing someone that I used to like love. He was like, "Man, you're better than that. Kill him with success."
You just don't want to be on the record with that shit.
you know, so-
That'll come back and haunt you.
So I stay out of Silver Lake, so you know.
Yeah. I feel you, man. In the old days, you could kill easy, man. You know?
I worry about the accidental killing. I worry about like someone gets in your face in public, you swing on them, they fall, and then they're dead. And it's
Well,
just like,
that
oh,
happened to
shit.
George Perez. The guy didn't die, but the dude fell and hit his head, and he was
Yeah.
like in a coma. And then like a year later, the guy saw him on like K Loco or some shit, and he got fucking popped.
Damn.
Yeah, dude. I don't know. I walk the earth, dude. I don't want to cause problems. I don't want to be, you know, it's like,
I just want to catch some of these murderers, man. I've always wanted to find, more of a dead body than I found when I was young, and I've always wanted to catch, find a murderer.
you're such an enigma. You're such an
I'm
interesting.
just obsessed with
Every
them.
time you are what they call me on the show, the filthy onion,
Mm-hmm.
because it just layers. But you truly are one of the most layered individuals I've ever met in my life, and that's why you're so fucking funny. What are you working on? Because we got to go. I know you got to get out of here.
I'll be coming up in some cities. I'll be in New York, June 23rd and 24th at
Dude,
Gotham.
Skankfest, right?
No, I didn't get asked to do that. Who even runs that?
Dude, all you had to do was ask. I'm out there then.
Oh, I didn't
June?
know.
In June?
Yeah, 23rd. It's that same weekend. I'll
Is
be
there
at
any
Gotham.
way I could do a guest spot?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Thank you, dude.
You're welcome.
I would love that.
So Sam will be on one of those shows. We don't know which one yet, but we'll figure it out. And then I'm in Stark County, Illinois, which is a small town. We're doing a fundraiser to refurbish a theater out there, and that's in rural Illinois on the 30th of June. And then July 7th and 8th, I will be in Nashville at Zany's, and I really need some support for those shows. It's my first time there.
Dude, you are by far my favorite comic. I very rarely watch somebody that makes me feel like I am a phony at this. But you put me in that one show that you did in the belly room, and you were just on fucking fire. And it just pushed me to like, I got to write more, got to write harder, got to write faster. And I think you're wonderful. I know you're super slammed, and I appreciate you coming in. I know you got to get out of here. So happy your YouTube's blowing up, dude.
I appreciate it.
It's fucking great.
Well, you inspired me. You told me to start doing it, So I appreciate the
And it's
inspiration.
picking
man.
up, dude. You're
Yeah.
doing it right. I throw so much shit on my YouTube. I got to pull it back a little bit.
Yeah.
And keep it. I do really love this new thing I'm doing called Twerking in Politics. I think it's going to blow up. I take Instagram models' videos, which I find to be the most vapid form of entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
And I put political messages over it.
Oh, that's great.
So it's like, I'll send you a link. It's fucking the best. And
I know a guy who might sponsor that. He works for the Libertarian Party. They're always looking for unique ways to get to people.
Dude, I'm going to talk to Penthouse. I've been talking with them because they want me to get the Naughty Show going again.
Yeah.
And fucking talk about them. Go to his porno shoot. Just get the fucking girls twerking. Get that booty meat slapping while I give them what's really going on with
Ross
the
Perot.
motherfucking
Ross
deep
Perot.
state, motherfucker. Final thoughts, Ryan?
If you ever need a gimp for those naughty shows, man, I know a guy.
Yeah.
Are you handicapped?
Oh, no, just a leather mask.
Yeah, he bleached Ari's asshole.
Oh, yeah, I saw bits and pieces of that.
Yeah. Aaron, any thoughts?
This was fun.
This was a good one.
Yeah.
Aaron's slowly coming around. Fought everything the whole time, but now he's into it. He gets it. Good luck on your podcast. Your podcasts are both great.
Appreciate it.
I fucking root for you. I love you, buddy.
I love you too, Sam. Thank you.
Guys, we'll see you on the other side. Next week, we're working on Freeway Ricky Ross for this fucking podcast.
Rate,
Talk about
review, subscribe. Get
guys, if you want Ricky Ross, Freeway Ricky Ross in the podcast, hit him up, dude. A couple of you guys do it. Help a brother, help a brother. We'll see you guys on the other side. Take care, guys.
Dude, this is awesome. It's all about conspiracies, man. It's amazing.